Now it is my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker for today, one of our favorite friends from the San Diego area, Reverend Dr. Jerry Troyer. Dr. Jerry is a native of San Diego County, California, where he serves as a staff minister at the Om Center for Spiritual Living, and he is the administrator for Anton, the affiliated New Thought Network, which is an organization of New Thought independent religious science centers, and CLF is a member of that organization. Dr. Jerry lives in La Mesa, California with his beloved golden retriever, Maggie. I bring you now Dr. Jerry Troyer.
Good morning, dear ones. I'm Reverend Dr. Jerry Troyer, and it's my great pleasure to be with you today. Beloved Community Creative Living Fellowship, thanks to Reverend Dr. Sherry for the opportunity. My topic for this morning is the lusciousness of allowing, and subtopic, saying yes to risky invitations. Think about the word allowing. Allowing to me goes against one of my very most favorite words, and I bet yours as well, should. I believe that if there's a word in the English language that we could take out of the dictionary and send into space, it would be should. You should do that. You shouldn't do that. You should go to the gym. I think your gyms are open. Our gyms are open again. You shouldn't have that second piece of chocolate cake. You should go to church. Well, see, that's the exception because you should go to church. But all the rest of those, hear that judgment, hear that I don't really want to do that, but I should, ... We have our rules and assumptions and history on how life should be. And everything is fine as long as everything is fine. But what happens when something happens? What happens when something changes? Can we allow ourselves, there's that word again, can we allow ourselves to allow whatever is going on in the moment without shoulding all over it, for lack of a better word? I think you would agree with me when I say that many of our boundaries, many of our shoulds have been blown right out the door the last couple of months because life is very different, as we know, from a couple of months ago. And the things and the experiences and the way of life that we had gotten used to and assumed would always be there hasn't been there the last little while. So we create boundaries about how things should be, about others and how they treat us. And I don't know about you, but when I hear the word boundary, it makes me think of a relationship with someone. And my boundary is, yes, you can do this. Yes, I'll do this for you. Yes, I'll give this to you, but I won't do this and I won't do this, and so forth. The boundary is, whether it's the white picket fence, the imaginary white picket fence around our property, or just whatever it is. But the limits on how far we'll go to help someone, how far we'll go to do something for someone, and so forth. We might have boundaries about ourselves and our willingness to ask for help. My congregation in San Diego is doing a book study on the 4 agreements. And the third agreement is don't make assumptions. And that third agreement, and if you're not familiar with this book, I just so invite you to go and get a copy. And if you have it, read it again, because this is just amazing wisdom for us, no matter where we are in the scheme of things, but certainly these days. So don't make assumptions, and part of that agreement is our willingness and our ability to ask for help. I just don't know how to do this, but for the men in the audience and the women who are in a relationship with a man, you know that historically we were taught real men don't ask for directions. So I'm going to be 45 minutes late but that's okay because I'd rather be late than be embarrassed by having to ask for directions. Have we gotten past that? Are we able to ask for help when we need it, or are we still stuck in that? Do we reach out to our ministers and practitioners? You have wonderful people at CLF, ministers and practitioners who are able and willing to help you, because even in this teaching, life does not necessarily look like a Hallmark card. And sometimes we need to be reminded of the truth of who we are. And that's why our ministers and practitioners are there to help us with that. Can we allow ourselves to be inconvenienced? That was one of the things that I learned through this adventure with the virus and the distancing and the changes in store hours and so forth. Our Costco in La Mesa, which is where I am, just east of San Diego, was opening at 8 o'clock in the morning for those of us, and wait for it because I'm going to have to admit it, those of us 60 years of age and older. And so I was there at 6:30 in the morning several times in line with what wound up being 300 or 400 of my closest friends all over the age of 60, waiting for the store to open because you had to get in early so that you could get the disinfecting wipes and the toilet paper and all the rest of that. And I went with a little bit of, oh, for God's sake, you know how that is, that I don't want to do this. This is absolutely ridiculous. But at the same time, curiosity, and I just have to experience this because ideally we'll never have to do this again. And I want to be able to tell my grandchildren that, yes, I stood in line at Costco at 6:30 in the morning for toilet paper. But nonetheless, can we allow ourselves to adjust as the situation is, knowing that it's going to change again, and at some point we really will get back to normal? Can we allow ourselves to be inconvenienced? I used to travel a lot for business, and will again to come and see you and speak in other churches and centers when we're able. And every once in a while, I'd love to have a glass of wine. But it's interesting because different states have different laws regarding the sale of alcohol. And so in California, you can buy a bottle of wine till 2 o'clock in the morning, and then again starting at 6 o'clock in the morning in grocery stores and pretty much anywhere you want to, not the bank obviously, but you know what I mean. And I don't remember how it is in Arizona, but in a lot of other states, and especially in the South, you got to go to the package store and they're only open during X hours, and it's an inconvenience. Do we allow ourselves to be inconvenienced and to allow that that's the situation, how it is now? Do we allow differences? This was a big thing for me, and I bet it was for you too, if you've been in a romantic relationship, meeting someone outside the family. And so you've grown up with your parents or grandparents or whatever your situation was, but you've grown up with them and you all believe the same things and act the same way and eat the same things and all the rest of that. And then all of a sudden you're meeting these people who eat strange things or think strange things or do strange things. Can we allow ourselves to recognize that not everybody believes what we believe and come from that place of curiosity? Oh, that's interesting, as compared to y'all are just a little crazy. It's really important to do the former rather than the latter, as you know, if we're going to build a relationship with someone and someone's family. Can we allow someone to have different rules? I have a rule about being on time, and I'm better than I was, but back in the day, and back when in the 90s and 2000s, when I was traveling for business a lot, especially, I would be at the airport very, very early, hour and a half to 2 hours early, because you got to get there and you got to make sure everything's okay and so forth. And I get to the business meeting half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour ahead of time, and just sit in the parking lot and listen to the radio. What did it mean? Because my father taught me, what does it mean if you're late? It means you're immature. It means you don't value someone else's time. It means just a whole list of things. So if you were late to church this morning, please understand, in no way am I speaking to you. This is my trip and nobody else's. But these were my rules. I am absolutely convinced that the universe has a sense of humor, because my husband, who passed away about 18 months ago, as many of you know, did not have that rule, and either hit the door right on time or a few minutes late, and it was not a thing to him. And we got to go to the airport. We got to get the stuff in the car. I'm waiting for you. I've been down here for 20 minutes and I'm waiting for you. I'll be there in a minute, dear. Do you have people in your life that with those different rules? Are they wrong and you're right? Are you wrong and they're right? No, they're just different. Can we allow different people to have different rules and work together and live together in harmony, for lack of a better word? Can we allow people to be on their path? This was really big for me. My husband went through a period of substance abuse using crystal meth in 2009 and 2010. And he quit his job, went through outpatient treatment for 6 months, totally rebuilt his life, and found a job even better than the one he had left before. And so he just absolutely was my hero in that regard. And a dear friend that he met in treatment, who also became a dear friend of mine, while my husband was able to get and stay clean and sober and rebuild his life, this friend of ours was not. So he needed a place to live, and so he was living with us at the time when my husband made his transition about 18 months ago, and he was there for me, and we could cry together and we could talk together, and it was really valuable. But he kept relapsing and kept relapsing. And I said, you just can't do this when you're living in my house. And so finally, about the fourth or fifth time, I had been to church and I had come home, and he was really all over the place, because he had just had a situation in his life and had used and just was a big mess. And so before my brain or my heart kicked in, my mouth said, get out of my house. And so he left. And so it's really been, it's been an ongoing forgiveness process for me to allow him back into my life. And he won't be in my house again, but he will be in my life again. I was talking with a friend not long ago, and she made the comment that, so often we look at somebody's life that we judge as a great big mess and say, your life would be so much easier if you would just do what I tell you to. If you just get and stay clean and sober, get a job, get a car, get a relationship when you're ready, settle down, things will just be so much better for you. And my friend made the incredibly wise observation that, but what if it's not? My life, I want my life I want my life to look the way I want my life to look. But maybe that's not how he wants his life to look. In his heart of hearts, somehow, some way, in this experience, it's the roller coaster and the bouncing off the walls kind of thing, because that's just what he's doing on this life experience? Can we allow people we love to be on their own path? It's an interesting question. Can we allow people who we love to be on their own path when their path doesn't look like ours? Can we allow ourselves to say, I don't know? This teaching that we call religious science or New Thought is so wonderful, and we absolutely love it. It's religious science or science of mind. That means it works for everybody in every life experience the same way all the time. It's absolute, cut and dried, black and white, no question. But what if it's not? What if we don't have all the answers? What if we don't know how things are going to look after we get past a certain point? We can come from that place of mystery, from that place of not knowing, while quoting Louise Hay saying, I am safe, it's only change. Ever had something show up in your life that you absolutely did not expect? I don't have the consciousness for that. I don't have a belief in that. Where in the world did that come from? Can we allow ourselves to just work through that experience? Ministers and practitioners in this teaching, and I would suggest that whether you have the certificate on your wall or not, if you've been studying with us, if you've been in this teaching for more than 6 months or so, you're a practitioner. Us ministers and practitioners sometimes go through things in our lives and might look at whatever it is and should on ourselves, there's that word again, because I'm a religious science practitioner, I'm a religious science minister, I shouldn't be having these things in my life. But we do. And so we can allow ourselves to go through what we go through, to stay out of judgment, to stay out of guilt, to stay out of shoulding on ourselves, and again, reach out for help as we need to. So, changing our minds, and I would say that has to do with our beliefs about money, our beliefs about relationships. Change is good, and change can be scary, and change can be upheaval. I bet you would agree with me on that. But changing our minds, changing our lives, releasing what no longer serves us, can be a risky invitation. The book that I used for this morning that our practitioner read from is A New Way to Be Human by Robert V. Taylor. I absolutely love this book, and it's a funny story. My roommate from college, we somehow were talking about something a couple of years ago, and he said, and I was explaining the New Thought and religious science and so forth, and he said, well, do you know Robert V. Taylor, or have you read his book? And so Robert is a friend of Mark's, and so that's how we kind of got connected. But just really, really nice guy, and just a wonderful book. So A New Way to Be Human, 7 Spiritual Pathways to Becoming Fully Alive by Robert V. Taylor. Most of us like sameness. You might like change, and good for you. Every once in a while, go a different way to work or try a new restaurant or whatever. A dear friend of mine, we were talking about change in our lives versus staying the same, and she grew up in a military family and counted that she had moved like 24 times in her elementary and high school years, which just is absolutely amazing to me, because I've lived in the same house for 23 years. My parents lived in the house we grew up in for 56 years. They were married for 59 years. My husband and I were together for 33 years. I worked in the same job until I was, I like to say, lovingly released, but laid off for 23 years. So obviously, I don't have a lot of record in change. But change happens. And can we accept the risky invitation and allow whatever it is to come into our lives with the question, how will this be? Again, knowing that we are safe. Can we change a belief, an experience, a relationship, whether intentional or not, to allow ourselves to accept that without bitterness, without anger, without resentment, really is a risky invitation. It's a risky invitation when we get that divine discontent. This just isn't working for me. This body situation, this financial situation, this whatever it is, this isn't working for me, and we can ask what we need to do to change it and move forward. I'd like to repeat one of the paragraphs that our practitioner read for this morning, just for focus, coming from the book. What are risky invitations? Risky invitations interrupt the imagined or assumed course of your life, raising the stakes right where you struggle the most. Responding to those invitations take you beyond your comfort zone, inviting transformation and an enlarged understanding of yourself, others, and the holy. I love that he refers to spirit as the holy. The perceived risk compared to what you imagine to be certain may tempt you to decline the invitation, but don't say no just yet. So how do we allow ourselves to navigate these risky invitations? To look at the change in what we've always believed, always assumed. They'll always be there for us. I'll always be able to, whatever it is, I'll be able to work at this job until I'm 65 and want to retire. How do we look at these and accept this invitation to accept, to allow, to thrive as we move forward through it? To feel safe in the midst of heart-wrenching grief because of a loss. Is there a way that we can do this? Can we allow ourselves to be fully alive in order to express and experience all the good that life has for us? So there are 3 stepping stones that Robert V. Taylor talks about in the book, starting with, you are loved for your existence. And quoting from the book, your existence is cause for thanksgiving. Yet many of us have internalized the unfortunate trinity of would, should, and could. We've heard the direction of if only you could, or you should, or you shouldn't, or you shouldn't have. We've even participated in keeping ourselves from our bliss with the excuse, I would love to do that, but, or if only I could, or I would if. It results in keeping us distant from the truth that we are loved because we exist. The holy has no use for such self-diminishment. Remember, A Course in Miracles says, God himself would be incomplete without you. So many of us come with that old baggage about original sin. And if you've come from traditional Christianity, you might have, and even if you've been in New Thought for a really long time, you might have that old residue about deservedness. And you remember that from the Old Testament, that the Adam and Eve thing, and of course it's all the woman's fault. Just kidding. About the thing with the apple in the garden, and they ate, and then it went downhill from there. And so there is that belief in many areas of traditional Christianity that a baby is born, they get whacked on the bottom so that they'll breathe, and basically life goes downhill from there. Where are we really? Not what we should believe, not what Ernest Holmes tells us to believe, not what our minister tells us to believe, but where are we really in believing about our deservedness and our value in the world? Because our big life, our wonderful life that we came here to live, it isn't going to manifest for us if we don't believe we deserve it. So what do we really believe about that? And can we allow ourselves to look at it, to look at our beliefs and change what no longer serves us? One of my favorite authors is Edwene Gaines. She wrote The Four Spiritual Laws of Prosperity, and quoting her, what must I change about myself in order to receive this? Whatever this is, whatever we're choosing to experience, whatever the divine discontent said, yeah, you're ready to accept something better. What must I, because as we know, we're not talking God into doing anything. So what must I change about myself in order to receive that? We are loved for our existence by this loving, nurturing, all-giving presence. Can we look at the different areas of our lives and increase our tolerance for good? What's your tolerance for good? If somebody called, I really want to go to Hawaii next year, you figure out the dates, I'll pay for everything. Just come with me. Would that be okay? Really? Or would we start to think about all the reasons why we couldn't possibly do that? How's our tolerance for good? Interesting question. Can we allow ourselves to follow our bliss and do whatever it is that makes our heart sing? Or is that too good for us? So 3 stepping stones. The first one, you are loved for your existence. The second one, trusting and cultivating our imagination. We think of our boundaries as the fence around us to keep us from people who want too much or are users or for whatever reason we want to keep away from us. But in keeping people and experiences out, we're also keeping wonderful new experiences and wonderful new ideas out very often. Do we allow ourselves that lusciousness, love that word, that the lusciousness and the richness of life? Or no, it's okay, I'm all right. Do we allow ourselves that greater and greater and greater good? Do we allow ourselves to see new places, to go when we're able, to visit with people who we have absolutely nothing in common with, different religion, different political background, different culture? If we don't, we're missing out on this most amazing experience. Did you know, and if you've not been, there is no judgment here, it's just my observation. London looks very different from North 6th Street in Phoenix. And it looks very different, and Paris looks very different from Baltimore Drive in La Mesa. It's the first time I traveled overseas, it really was an eye-opener to me, because I thought every place looked the same. And the truth is, of course, that it's incredibly different. That's part of the richness of this experience, to allow ourselves to get out there and see what's different that we're not aware of. Trusting and cultivating our imagination encourages us to learn something new, to spend time perhaps with people who we have nothing in common with. As I mentioned earlier, many of you know, I work with an organization called Urban Street Angels, and we serve homeless young people, age 18 to 25-year-olds. And we used to do a Tuesday night shelter where the youth could come in and have dinner and take a shower and watch a movie. And it just was the most amazing experience. We still have a 9-month housing program, and we have about 70 youth in our program, but we're not able to do the shelter anymore for a variety of reasons. But I had the opportunity to visit with so many of the young people and get a completely new perspective on life, because their lives were the complete opposite of mine. I had 2 parents in my life until I was 50 something. This, as I talked about before, the same house, the same situation. We never really worried if there was going to be enough money, any of those things. And I believe it's important to get someone else's perspective coming from a place different from where we come from. Different from where we come from. Do we allow ourselves to listen to that imagination and say, yeah, it goes against everything I'm comfortable with, but I want to do that? Are you ready to go back to school? You ready to go back to get your certainly your GED if you don't have it, but your college degree or your certificate in whatever? There's a great line in one of the Golden Girls episodes. And if you're familiar with the series, Sophia, who is the oldest one, she's 80 something, talks about going back to school to be a lawyer. And her daughter says, well, that's crazy. You'll be 85 when you're done. And she says, well, I'm going to be 85 anyway. Do we allow ourselves to listen to that still small voice, that divine discontent, that longing, and say, yes, I'm going to do that? And come out of our comfort zones? Several years ago, we had the opportunity to take the Queen, I think it was the Queen Mary, Cunard cruise ship from New York City to Southampton outside of London in January. So going across the North Sea in January. And I had a couple of friends say, really sure you want to do that at that time of year? And we were divinely led to do this, and it was absolutely fine. And the weather was glorious. It absolutely was not the challenge. But the challenge was because I need my reservations, and I need a rental car, and I need car keys, and I need paper maps to show me how to go from point A to point B, although thankfully I have gotten away with that with the advent of the smartphone. But so we flew from San Diego to LaGuardia, picked up the van, the cruise line van, and no control. Just waiting for the van, no control. And the van was there, and the driver was there, and got our luggage and went to the cruise port in Brooklyn, which just was incredibly cool to me, and then boarded the ship, and we were on board ship for 5 days. It was a religious experience. It just was so amazing and so wonderful. And then we landed in a foreign country in Southampton, outside of London, with no car keys and no maps and all the rest of that, but the van to take us to the hotel, which it did. And then we ran around London for 3 days and then flew home. And I was completely out of my comfort zone. Completely out. I've never done that before, and it was glorious and beyond. And I'm so glad we did it. Can we allow ourselves to listen to that longing, to that divine idea that, geez, I'd love to do that? And in wisdom and in understanding, but also in joy and passion, say, yes, I'm going to do that. If it's something that I really, really want to do, if my imagination is telling me and showing me that this is possible, then it's possible. And there's a way for me to do that. What if we finally changed our story? this is a risky invitation because I don't know about you, but some of my stories I've gotten a lot of mileage out of, and it's been, you know, the aw factor. I might have mentioned this before. I was I like to say lovingly released, but I was laid off from my job, my full-time job, in December of 2008 after 23 years. A week before Christmas, and any other heart-pulling facts that I can share with you. And I must admit that I really did get a lot of mileage out of that, and would tell people the story, and they would say, "Oh, how could they do that to you?" and so on and so on. And I had my pity parties. And it almost felt like I'd carry my cake and my hats and my plates and my tablecloth with me, and I'd start to feeling sorry for myself and pull over to the side of the road and have my pity party. And I got a lot of mileage out of that for a while, and then the still small voice finally said, "For the love of God," no pun intended, or maybe just a little, "Aren't you tired of telling that story?" Because that had to happen. The job, even though the title was the same, the job had changed and I wasn't having fun anymore. So something had to change. Can we change our story? Can we look back and see that somehow, some way we made it through with this amazing experience of love and support and connection that we have with the universe, and change the story into something that feels better? Changing and even releasing our story is a risky invitation because it requires us to stop blaming or being stuck on a particular situation. Well, I can't because of, and at some point, there's the invitation, our imagination, that still small voice says, yeah, but now you can. Now you can look at this for what it was. You can forgive as you need to and move forward. Quoting from the book again, "The risky invitations that life offers to each of us present us with choices to accept or decline them. It is accepting them, often not knowing where exactly they will lead us, that our intuition and imagination cheers us on. As much as we are loved for our existence, we are enlivened as we allow imagination to be an active participant in saying yes." That imagination, those ideas, that still small voice, wouldn't it be fun to? Wouldn't you like to? That's our imagination. That's the still small voice urging us to live that bigger, greater life. So you are loved for your existence, trusting and cultivating your imagination, and then polishing the world. And I would suggest that, as divine timing would have it, this one was really big for me and is big for us. And quoting the book again, "The journey to become fully human invites us to turn outward, experiencing and welcoming our connection with others. It is in the delight of being a relative of the rest of humanity that our desire for the happiness of others and our intuitive imagination meet, revealing that we can each polish the world. Every kindness and small action join with those performed by others in loving the world. In my allowing, I can see that I don't know. I would like to tell you that I know. I know about your experience. I get it. I have sympathy. I have empathy. I understand what you've been through. But I don't. And may I suggest that that applies for people of a different ethnicity, people of a different social background, financial background, people of a different experience. I don't understand what they've been through. So I can offer compassion and understanding and the opportunity to be heard, coming from that place of unconditional love. And I believe that that's what we are here to do, is to say, I don't know. I just know that I see you as the beloved, as the essence, expression, and experience of spirit, just as I am. So what's your risky invitation today? What's the still small voice telling you? What belief are you ready to let go of? What hurt are you ready to lovingly release? What experience of abundance in your health, in your relationships, in your money are you ready to accept? Any change is a risky invitation. But if we allow that, if we allow what's here now, but also allow ourselves to move forward in our greater good, that's how we live this most amazing life. Because as a wise man, not me, once said, if nothing changes, nothing changes. So with that in mind, join me in the light for just a minute. So in the peace and the quiet of this moment, we allow ourselves to be reminded of our oneness with the God presence, with one another, and with all of life. And we give great thanks for this day, for this beloved spiritual community, for the opportunity to be together thanks to this most amazing technology. We give thanks for the reminder that we are the beloved of God, that because we are, and because we are one with this loving, nurturing presence, as well as with one another, this presence, this love, this spirit always says yes to us. So we allow ourselves to accept that risky invitation, to release what no longer serves us and accept what is ours now, knowing that greater good, greater abundance, greater health, greater relationships, whatever it is, are all ours for the taking, because life always says yes. We give thanks for this teaching, for this community, for our time together, and together we say, and so it is. Namaste.